Paul never liked ballet. It was always Sheila's thing, which didn't explain very well why Paul was sitting in the fourth row, sandwiched between strangers as the lights dimmed. 2 minutes in, and Paul confirmed in his head what he already knew. This was a real bad idea. 4 minutes in, and Felix made his first appearance. He swooped in from off stage and pranced around as one would expect. Paul couldn't differentiate between the different styles and moves. To him, it was all just a frolicking leaping through music with some spins. Obviously, it was more complicated than that to the professionals on the stage and to almost every member in the audience besides himself. 10 minutes in, and finally Sheila made her entrance. He wasn't sure if he was the only audience member to gasp a bit at her beauty. He sucked in his lips a bit, and his heart flopped onto its side and fluttered there for a while like a dying bird. Sheila literally leapt into Felix's arms, and he caught her, held her up, and spun her around for all to see. Paul couldn't look away, but it tore at his heart to watch. Ballet is about passion as much as anything. Paul got that. Even when there was none between the performers, they would act like there was. It was acting as well as dancing. Felix and Sheila looked into each other's eyes, and Paul knew what possibly everyone else must suspect. There was no acting in that look. If the choreographer had allowed, he was sure the twirl would have ended in a kiss. Paul had the emotional survival instincts of a gummy worm. He knew it was a bad idea, and there he sat, on Sheila's invitation, not 20 feet from the passions he had missed out on in his own life. 3 years ago they had been friends. Each had been in their own relationships at the time, and so it maintained that level. Then during a summer of breakups and a bit too much drinking, they had briefly been lovers. It was a doomed relationship with no common interest, nothing but a brief passion and perhaps some shared experiences to keep the thing held together through a summer storm of turmoil, angst, romance, and lastly, further heartbreak. They promised to maintain a friendship, and against all odds they did. Partially this was because of Sheila's forgiveness of his occasional transgressions, and partially is because Paul had a finely honed instinct for emotional self-torment. There was nothing to hang a real relationship on. There was nothing that should make his heart hurt like it did. They had both moved on, and he had had other lovers. He had one right now who he cared very much about. Perhaps it was just a jealous instinct left over from his ancestors' days as cavemen. Perhaps it was a simple physical ache, for she was undeniably gorgeous, on stage or off. On the intellectual level, he recognized all these things. He was glad for her current happiness. Clearly no one in that audience must have any doubts at this moment as to the sheer joy the two felt in each other's arms and in their shared passion for dance. It was a beautiful thing. Or it would have been, if Paul's heart wasn't still wrapped up in Sheila's web for reasons he could not defend nor deny. It went on for a time, as ballets do. When it wrapped up, she bowed, hand in hand with Felix, and she glanced once at Paul and smiled. He turned all the inner angst and suffering into an outward show of joy and support and smiled back. The bow ended and they stepped off stage. Paul and the audience gathered their things, and while he had an invitation to the after-party, he texted Sheila an excuse that she would see through in a moment and snuck out. It was a long, cold walk to his car. He felt like it should be raining or the sky oppressive in some way to match his mood, and so the clear, bright stars did nothing to cheer him up. He felt the heavens working against him, working against something that could and should never be. But longing knows no logic, and his heart was too practiced a hand at suffering to let such a moment go. It relished this moment of conflicted desires like a puppy rolling in tall grass. As he drove home, the car warmed up, and he rolled the window down and let the cold air rush into the cab. Being warm and comfortable felt wrong and ill-fitting to his temperament. He shivered into a seat and swore off ballet yet again. Another excuse next time, more promptly given. Surely she would understand. He could be her friend in all ways, and in all things, except this. To see her so beautiful, so radiant, so joyful, so alive, and to sit there in such discordant pain felt dishonest. This was her moment to shine with her appreciative circle. This was her night, and nothing made Paul feel the sting of the thousand might-have-beens more keenly than these moments when she was so physically close and yet couldn't be any further away. Paul turned on the car MP3 player and started some songs of Haya. He let the cold night air mix with the oddly tuned guitar and the mournful songs and wallowed. He wallowed with abandon. He wallowed with practice. He wallowed for the sake of wallowing and for the love of Sheila. The cold stung his eyes, and when he wiped them to clear away the frozen moisture, he missed the light changing. He looked up again just in time to see his car about to cross the stop line with the red light shining down on him, and slammed on the brakes. His car squealed to a stop, and his cab lit up from the headlights of a vehicle coming from a cross direction. He saw the lights looming down on him before they abruptly swerved, and with a blare of a horn passed. It was over so fast. A brief mistake come and gone so fast that biology could not keep up. Here it was, already over, and yet now his heart started to thud in his chest. Now the adrenaline poured out. He breathed in quick and jagged. Suddenly the angst of a moment past felt like the plaything of a child, or a man pretending to be one. He felt foolish and stupid, and crept around the corner so as to exit the intersection, and turned down the music and rolled up the window. It took another few blocks for his heart to settle, and another before he thought of Sheila's after-party again. Maybe he should go. No, he knew too well that it would throw him back into the angst he felt no longer fit the moment. He drove home instead, and called his current lover, and told her how great they did and how proud of her he was, but also that he didn't think he would go again, since it just wasn't his thing. And all these things were true. The end.